Our next reader is a special treat. His name is Carlo Matos. He's the author of 3 books of poetry, A School for Fishermen, Counting Sheep Till Doomsday, and Big Bad Asterisk. And I can tell you that Big Bad Asterisk, and I'm sorry, I know yours, Brian, but we're gonna use a metaphor from Nazareth. Because not only is this book amazing, it is the deep canyon under the ocean, and it is the 80-foot wave. It is all of that. It is the tornado meets the hurricane. You've got to give him some credit because he is also not only an incredible poet and professor, he is a cage fighter. So, out of the cage and onto the page, give him a big round of applause.
Yeah, okay, now I can't live up to any of that. Awesome. Thanks, Amy. That was a lovely intro. I'm going to read from my new book, Big Bad Asterisk. And I just realized that I've written about this moment before in my first book. When I was 15, everybody in the band I played in, Banda Social Conceição, we all went back to Sayre to play the big procession in the Millicent Borges Accardi, right? It's epic, soul-killing procession because it was like hours and hours. My poor feet hurt still. But the cool part was that like the entire village of the scattered lost ones who all came over when they were in the 70s, we all went back together, like everyone. So here we were in the Azores, I was about 15, and we had been a bunch of times, of course, before, but this time it wasn't just like me and my brother hanging out, it was like everyone, so we had like a gang of like, you know, Massachusetts boys, but we were in some, yeah, we were in them stage. So in my first book, I actually wrote about the procession, you know, because that was the interesting part. But in this one, I just realized I wrote about something kind of sillier that happened with that group of boys. Like there's just this giant group of kids there trying to fit in poorly. Okay. Sayre is beautiful. Even though they were all young, they were still able to see that, although none of them would dare say it out loud. It was beautiful, sure, but boring. During the day, they went to the beach. At night, they played dominoes. 2 weeks of this, and someone was sure to catch a thrashing from some parent long green in the gills. Fishing was the one thing they could all agree on. Their grandfather, a seriously stern, old-school patriarch, only ever seemed comfortable when they had fishing poles in their hands. He was so old-world, he would never speak to them directly. It was an ancient game of grapevine. His messages relayed through their sweet, sweet grandmother and on through the genes. Their grandfather was known around the village for his obsessive power walking before power walking was even a thing. Because of his near limitless stamina, the villagers had named him the Tugboat. Actually, they called him Joe Tugboat or Zegbok. For most of their lives, they thought this was their grandfather's real name. It never occurred to them that that didn't make any sense. They continually ran into him as he rampaged the town. He was easy to spot after all, with that plunging way he walked, a walk they would all inherit. Of course, these were the same kids that translated Hoptepish as fish ass. Their countless cousins and aunts and uncles were happy to see them night after night coming home with a basket full of fish for dinner, as if remedying the damage done by their questionable American upbringings. Apparently everyone was their cousin here, which made the prospect of finding someone to make out with rather difficult. Not that that would have stopped them. There was nothing back home that equaled that march across town back to their grandfather's house. A gang this size would gather only suspicion back in the burbs, and how they loved to watch their mothers cook the fish and their fathers eat the fish. Even his little brother, who would never eat a piece of fish in his entire life. It was the bones, he said. They went, machete in hand, into the bamboo forest on the hillside. Okay, it was a live volcano, but they didn't want to think too much about that. New poles were needed. Today, they were going further out. There was real danger there. No lifeguards, no parents nearby, or even a hospital or a doctor within easy reach. A fall from one of these rocks, and you'd be 5 fathoms deep and sip in the dark water. But They, puffed up on their newfound responsibility to feed the family, had to plunge deeper into the ocean's guts. The fish were so large they bent the crooked spines of the bamboo poles to breaking. As he was about to remove a final monster from a hook, a local kid, probably his cousin, caught his hand. It was poisonous, he said. They didn't ask questions, they just wanted that thing away from them. Their probable cousin, however, took the fish gently in both hands and eyed it sweetly. Then he held it up to his mouth, puckered his lips, and moved in for a kiss. Holding the fish lovingly to his pursed lips, he blew into its mouth, whispering something delicate in his Baroque Portuguese, and it inflated. It puffed up and stayed puffed, a little dirigible. It must be some kind of blowfish, they all simultaneously realized. He cast it into the water where it skimmed about on the surface like a tiny speedboat, waiting to exhale, desperate for the tide to return to a sterner deep. What they failed to notice, however, was that the tide had come in, in fact. There was no way to get to the next nearest outcropping, and the waves were splashing high. While they waited to be reclaimed by the sea like so many of their people, he thought of his uncle who lived near the black sand beach. Actually, they could see his house from the perch. One night, a large storm lifted the Atlantic over the seawall and helped it cross the street to slip gently into his uncle's house. By the time he woke up, his house was as shallow as a shoal. He joked that he only woke up because it made him pee his pants, the old hand-in-the-water routine. But who sleeps with their hand dangling over the edge? The truth was that he was lucky to get his family to their grandfather's house, where they waited for the brine to recede. He had to admit he wasn't averse to pissing his pants right about now, and he knew he wasn't alone, although no one would say that out loud. The black kites watched them from their cliff with the Atlantic view. Of course, everything here has an Atlantic view. Watching the fire that lightens the waters from below, a path strewn with fish tails, cleaved with fish heads, and leading, one hopes, to one of those golden age barks, maybe, or to Atlantis, or to the center of the earth to dine with furious Lucis bones. There are no black kites on the Azorian archipelago. Actually, the Azores is actually home to the American swallow-tailed kite, and of course, there have never been any goshawks. But now, they had forgotten about drums. Marching long hours every Sunday since the 4th grade, since the klaxon or clarinet lessons, its own countermeasure to be sure, since John Philip Sousa and polyester burned thighs. It was more an imitation of music anyway. So many hours and never getting past the first layer of predictability. And their poor feet. Were the little people of these islands something other than cobblers? They had to admit they were nothing like their grandfather. He was the kind who always had another life hidden in his shoes. The further out you went, the larger the fish trapped in the obsidian teeth, making a jagged maw. The rocks are literally obsidian. It's not a fancy way of saying black. Their dazzled beak puffin bones gone sky fishing. Not where they hunt, but where they are hunted, waiting to be served in the traditional way, raw. And then they saw him, marching headlong on the beach, their grandfather walking. Thanks.